Thanks for joining us today here on America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner, and myself. My name is Chris Spawn. Here to say I reach out 419-794-3030. It's 419-794-3030 online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. On today's show, we're going to talk about how America's Retirement Headquarters is helping save veterans and how you can get involved. And if you're over the age of 72 and donate to a charity, do you know this one simple strategy that can help you save money on taxes and make a bigger impact on the causes that are important to you? And we're also going to dive into the real estate market and get an update from John Mangas, the co-owner of ReMax Preferred. All this and more. But first, let me check in with the guys. Nolan, welcome back. Scott, glad to be with you guys as always. How we doing?
Doing good. Yeah, it's good to be back. Just got back a couple days. Spent a couple weeks down in Florida. Beautiful weather. It's nice to spend some time down there. It's nice to get back. I'm going to be here for a couple days, and then I'm taking back off, actually flying next week to open our new office in Fort Worth, Texas. So that'll be cool. And then going back down to our Florida office again. So kind of traveling around, but it is good to be in the hot seat and great to be here with everybody. And thanks for watching and tuning in.
Yeah, great to have you back, Nolan. It's been kind of lonely sitting here by myself, but no, it's good to have you back. I appreciate it, and glad you had safe travels and fun with the family and business as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you spending, what amounts to basically a layover here before you get back on the road again. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We know the real estate market is smoking hot again. And as a comprehensive firm, you guys are probably getting a lot of questions from clients about how they can reap from that, how they can benefit from the current trend. So what are some of the ways that you're telling people that, you can help?
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a few different things that we can do, from an investment perspective. Obviously give a lot of advice. Today we're going to be talking about people who own their own private real estate. We've got John who'll give us some insights into the local market. But even in investments in the investment world, there's quite a few different what's called real estate investment trust that are out there. There's both private and public REITs that people can invest into. Some of the positives of those are they're for folks that are looking to generate income, so you can have a way to get some predictable income for that. A lot of the retirees that we work with like to have predictable income in retirement time. And of course, we've seen the appreciation that's happened over the last couple of years. So those appreciation prices are also in some of the investments that you can invest into too. And then it helps with diversification, so we've been talking over the last couple of months about the market. It's been a little bit more volatile so far this year, and people are looking for some alternatives to try to reduce volatility. So it can be a good option. Something else that we also deal with is somebody who has, maybe highly appreciated assets, maybe a business building. Like our building here, if you've ever seen our headquarters, is about a 21,000 square foot complex. And I purchased this building back in 2008, the last time we had the real estate kind of meltdown, so it was a really good time. And I'm not looking to sell anytime soon, but a strategy would be a 1031 exchange. It's a way to sell your property and maybe move it into something called a triple net lease property to have less day-to-day headaches and be able to generate income. So if there's any business owners that are out there that have highly appreciated real estate, it's also an area that we can help kind of give you some guidance on and talk to you about. More so, I think what we oftentimes see when we're working with retail clients is they come in and they ask the question about moving into retirement, and they're asking about, do I pay off my mortgage by taking money out of my investment accounts? And I think a lot of times it can make sense. I think, for the most part, we like to see retirees be debt-free when they move into retirement time, and especially if they don't have a big balance outstanding on their mortgage, it can help free up a lot of cash flow by not having that monthly mortgage payments. So those are some different things to look at. And I know before we jumped on the show, we were talking a little bit about the local real estate market between the three of us. I live over in Waterville, so Scott and I both live in the same subdivision at Fallen Timbers, and I've been in my house for about 15 years now, and some of the neighbors, they were just passing along the message I heard yesterday on what they sold their house for, and it is just substantial, with the appreciation that we've seen here in Northwest Ohio. So what a great timely topic to be talking about the local market and how it's impacting people in such a positive way. But also, going to be talking about some of the maybe traps or pitfalls to kind of watch out for. We've had a lot of conversations, Chris, like you've mentioned, as people have been calling in. So, the common question that we oftentimes hear is, hey, I've got a 2-story, 5-bedroom house. The kids are now grown and moved away, and we don't necessarily need such a big house. What do we do now? Sometimes people, as they get a little bit older, and maybe they want to have a one-level house, maybe make the house a little bit more accessible so they can help maintain control and independence in retirement time. And these are all the topics that I think are very important. Why to stay tuned to today's show. But John, I'd say maybe I'll jump right in and kind of ask you, what are you seeing like in the trends in the local market here with the real estate?
So the real estate market is uber hot. I think most people know that. And by the way, it's not just in Northwest Ohio. I mean, most markets across the United States are having record appreciation and lower inventory and by inventory I mean number of homes available for sale, than we've historically seen. To provide some Northwest Ohio context to that, post-recession, so let's just say maybe 2014 to 2016, our local multiple listing service would have anywhere from 3,000 to 5,500 homes on the market. And before I came here today, I looked, and there were 567 homes on the market. So we're looking at really 10% of the number of homes available for people to purchase than we had just a really reasonably short period of time ago.
I wonder, so maybe you know that, I don't know if you know this number or not, but are there still a large number of homes coming on the market and being sold so rapidly? I know in our subdivision, Nolan, we'll see a sign coming soon, and then the for sale sign's gone because it's gobbled up so quick.
Yeah.
So John, would you say that there's not as many homes in inventory right now, but are there still a lot of homes being put up for sale and being sold rapidly?
You hit the nail on the head. They are being sold rapidly.
Okay.
The number of sales for Q1 2022 were off by about 7%. And that really, compared to the same period the previous year. But the reason for that goes back to sort of what we were talking about off air. Where do people go next?
Right.
And if you don't have a plan, there was a time when, and I think we probably have all talked to people who said, well, we're going to just put our house on the market and see what happens. Well, that's not a strategy right now.
No. I've told some friends, don't put your house on the market unless you're ready to sell.
You better have a plan.
Right.
And if that plan is going to your lake house at Devil's Lake, or if that plan is moving in with the in-laws, or if that plan is going into a duplex that you've owned for years and one side's empty, that's great. But if your plan is to put it on the market and then go find a house that meets your needs, there's going to be some issues there. And by issues, I mean stress.
Yeah, definitely don't want stress in that situation, I would say, for sure. So if there's a plan in place, which is, literally what we talk about when it comes to retirement planning, always have a plan in place. You don't just show up one day and say, hey, I'm retiring,
Right.
and now what? Sometimes people come into the office and they say, I just retired a month ago, and tell me if I'm going to be okay, right? So it can be very stressful when you do that. A lot of the people, like I had a conversation earlier today with some clients that are purchasing a new house, and they're that typical generation getting closer to retirement time, and so it's been so long since they've been through a real estate transaction. So to avoid some of that stress, I'd say what are some of the pointers that you're telling people that are considering looking at either buying or selling?
So on the buy side is so challenging right now. We're seeing, and it's going to sound like I'm exaggerating, but we're sometimes seeing as many as 25 to 35 offers on a property.
Wow.
But it goes back to that supply and demand thing.
Sure.
With the limited number of homes available on the market, we still have a lot of supply. And, it's really been sort of an interesting, sort of a change in the industry. One of the changes that is so significant, and we'd never really seen this, at least in our market, is time and time again we're seeing, hypothetically, like millennials coming in and buying your house or my house, and they're writing a cash offer, and they're getting the cash from mom and dad, closing on the property, and sometimes you have to pay cash to prevail in a multiple offer situation today, right, guys?
Sure.
So you've got mom and dad funding a cash purchase, and then after they close, they're getting the mortgage on the back end. I don't think we've seen that in our market very often up to now.
No, that is true. And it's actually that exact scenario, the couple I was just talking about. So they were calling because what they were trying to figure out was how to come up with the cash to be able to make that purchase.
Sure.
And so, one of the things that I shared with them is they didn't realize that there are some ways that you can take money from a retirement account, and you have 60 days in order to put that money back, and you can do that one time per year as a strategy, because what they were concerned about is they didn't think that the bank was going to be able to get their financing put in order exactly like what you talked about. So for those of you, if you are looking at that cash situation and you have retirement accounts, again, it's something you can talk to your accountant about, but there is a 60-day rollback rule that could potentially allow you to take some money out and then ultimately use that to solve that cash issue. Again, it's something before you do that, you want to know how the rules work, because you don't want to get stuck in a tax situation either, to make sure that you're getting prepared. So that's even the scenario. We have a Facebook group for our neighborhood,
Yes.
and there's always a good lot of comical posts on there about
There
somebody
are.
leaving their trash can out or things like that. But I don't know if you noticed the one post that was on a couple of weeks ago. So one of the neighbors recently moved out of state, and so he had put a post on Facebook that said his house was going to be listed for sale, and they were going to accept and review all offers that came in this week and make a decision on who they wanted to sell their house to on Sunday. So that's where you're talking about, the multiple offers. I've even seen on our Facebook page, hey, if anybody is considering
Right.
Yeah.
selling your house, please let us know
Right.
first.
Yeah, it's
before that
crazy when you
happens.
actually have people out there asking, "Are you going to sell?"
Right.
Because I'm interested in buying your house.
Right.
John, are you seeing that when a sale is made today, is it a pretty rapid closing? I mean, are we doing 30 days and you're out and the next ones are in?
30-day closings are very normal at the moment, especially when there's a local lender and a local title company involved.
Sure.
They have it down to a science. Sometimes there's extenuating circumstances. If there's someone transferring in or a third-party relocation company involved, sometimes that can slow the process down. But right now, there's not really a backlog in the title and financing industry. As you guys know better than anyone, interest rates have crept up a bit in the
Yep.
last 90 days, and that's taken some buyers out of the market. So that's sort of the change in the continuum that we're dealing with right now.
So would you anticipate with the interest rates creeping up? I mean, to me, a simple thinker would think, okay, the interest rates are creeping up. Some of these buyers are coming out.
Right.
That would in turn increase the number of homes that are out there for sale, and maybe get a more qualified buyer. And you might be able to buy a home instead of 30,000 over asking, maybe 10,000 over asking.
So, it's always dangerous to generalize, but I'm going to do that for a minute.
Sure.
With interest rates creeping up, the piece of the market that's impacting the most, at least impacting the most and first, are the first-time buyers who are typically, FHA or low down payment buyers, and it's impacting those folks immediately. And the flip side is they're also the ones that weren't having a lot of success in the marketplace up to this point anyway. Again, it's hard to compete with the cash buyer who gets
Right.
the buyer who gets the cash from mom and dad to pay cash. That's a really I know I've known him a long time, not you so much, but
Sure.
my parents didn't pay for my first house
No.
and allowed me to pay them back for it later. I suspect that wasn't the case
No,
for you either.
that was not the case.
Wasn't the case for
Wasion
me.
boy, Archibald boy.
Bryan, Ohio.
Bryan, Ohio, that's right.
So just west of
Yeah,
there a little bit.
yeah.
I can remember my first house that I bought was over on Hoyles Avenue,
Yeah.
back when I moved to Toledo. Was at the time a great first house for our family. I bought a duplex, and we lived in half and rented the other half out. Somebody paid half our mortgage.
Right.
I remember high-fiving my wife because we had got a 6.75% interest rate on that house.
Right.
Because our parents had
Right.
told us about
Sure.
the stories of the 10 or 14%
Right,
days.
Absolutely.
And as John's pointed out, I've known John for 20 plus years, and I've worked with ReMax Preferred personally on the
appreciate your
purchases
business.
and
Thank you.
sales of houses over the years. We're on our third house now, but after the refis and the rates, I also work with Liz Terwilliger, one of our mortgage brokers that we all have a great relationship to. I kind of felt like I got cheated at one point because my mortgage is only at like 3%, and I think for a moment of time it dropped even like to 2.5%. And so we've seen those rates come down, and now we've seen the rates start to trickle up. And we'll see kind of, I guess, what impact that does have. And I tend to agree with you, though. If you have a lot of these people that have large equities in their house, they're cash buyers, the interest rates may not impact that generation as much as they could the first-time home buyers. The house, I ended up buying it for $60,000, lived in it for several years. And then, again, somebody paid the mortgage because it was a duplex, and I sold it for $90,000 through one of your real estate agents, Mike Krause at ReMax Preferred. And
Mike Krause.
it worked out really good. Another great guy that I've known for a long time.
Well, we bought our last house 5 years ago, and prior to that, it had been 20 years. And just 5 years ago, it was like a total drastic change in how the whole process took place. And I can only imagine today, 5 years later, especially with like what we were talking, Nolan and John, about the older people that have been in a house for 30 years. Right. And now they're contemplating selling that home and maybe downsizing into something else. I mean, for them, this has to be a complete overwhelming, stressful situation for them.
You make such a great point, particularly some of the older clientele. Their house comes on the market, they get inundated with showings.
Sure.
Now we've got, for the sake of argument, 20 offers, and just sorting through all those offers, but then like explaining to the seller, which one is the most attractive, which one has this or that. And there are appraisal gaps, there are inspection waivers, there are things happening in the marketplace like I've never seen before. And, I'm not confident that they're all necessarily good for the buyer, the seller, or, the state of the industry, but, none of us get to make consumer rules, right? That we have to respond to what's happening in the market, even when we don't necessarily like it sometimes.
Right.
So a big takeaway, a buyer needs to be prepared well in advance with their financials, either through the approval process or cash. They also need to have a good idea as far as where their next location is going to go and have that kind of mapped out. When you're talking on the seller side, so the second house that I owned here in Toledo is over by what I still consider Franklin Park Mall. But that house, when I went to sell that house, I also worked with ReMax Preferred to have that house sold. There was some advice that was given as far as, changing carpets, redoing some of the concrete work, staging the house, so to say. And I wonder, what are the trends today? So if somebody's going to look to sell their house, do they still need to go through some of those things? Or because there's so many offers that are out there right now, is that something that people don't necessarily need to put money towards? Or what's the best way a seller gets prepared to get the maximum value for their property?
So I like to think of it this way. If you were in the staging business right now, if your job was to be a stager in Toledo, Ohio, you'd probably be on unemployment right now because that need just isn't there right now.
Sure.
However, that said, when you're getting ready to market a property, it still makes sense to have that property in its best possible light. So if it means having the furnace cleaned, if it means having the broken concrete on the front sidewalk repaired, it's great to get ahead of some of those things because what oftentimes happens, especially when you have a buyer paying over list price in a competitive market, they get this thing called buyer's remorse.
Sure.
So now we got it under contract. We paid $25,000 over list. Now we have the inspection process, and maybe it costs $1,200 to fix that broken sidewalk. But in their mind, that's a $5,000 sidewalk, and I want a $5,000 credit.
Right.
Do you kind of follow the line of thinking that goes with that? So getting ahead of those things just makes sense.
So I used to sell home and auto insurance, and most of the time when I sold home and auto, I'd go out to the house.
Right.
And I've kind of migrated away from that. And there were some houses that I would enter that should have been condemned.
Yes.
So when my wife and I were looking for our last house, we went through a couple of houses, and we walked in and walked out. Right. And it's like, how can you even consider showing this? I mean, there were clothes all over the place. I mean, it was complete disarray in that house. And I guess as a realtor, at some point you have to say, I'm sorry, but this isn't even presentable. You need to do something.
I'm laughing because we've all been in that house.
Oh, exactly.
It has a different address, but we've all been,
right.
we've all been in that same house.
Yeah.
sometimes that happens when there's a tenant in the property. Sometimes it happens when, there's someone with a, disability. Sometimes there's someone there that just plain old doesn't care.
Right.
And you have to make a business decision at that point if that's something you even want to get involved with.
Sure. It's crazy to see that kind of stuff, but it's out there.
What are some of the pointers I'd say that you give to the adult children? So, maybe it's, mom or dad, and maybe they're going into an assisted living facility, or maybe mom and dad have passed away, and now the kids are working towards, selling that to settle the estate. What are, some of the mistakes, or what are some of the tips that you would suggest for people that are looking to help mom and dad out with their house?
Sure. So in that scenario, when, we've got the house that needs to go to the market, oftentimes just getting it ready is such a huge psychological barrier for the heirs of the estate. There's 40 years worth of books. There's the whatever on the wall that was a Christmas gift in 1983. Encouraging them to do the best they can to get past all of the sentimental things and just get ready to box, organize. Sometimes it's not getting the entire place ready all at once. Maybe it's the front couple rooms, boxing, organizing. If there's paint to be neutralized, or the flock wallpaper needs to come down.
Sure.
Sometimes those things just have to happen, but there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of, if you will, hand-holding that goes into that process. It's a really tough stage for a lot of heirs.
Well, Nolan, you must have been reading my mind on that one there. So far, the show has talked about a 5-story house and downsizing. That's me. And the other one is exactly what you just mentioned. Mom's in the hospital again. She's been in the hospital 3 times this year. We're sending her to rehab tomorrow. And I said, Mom, it might be time to start thinking about this. And, she has a home, and it's been, we renovated it probably 10, 12 years ago. But it needs windows and it needs a roof. And it's like what Nolan said, are those things that we should be looking at maybe taking care of? But like you said, John, this is going to be an emotional process. And not for the weak at heart at all, because the last thing Mom wants to do is leave her home. And we're having that conversation right now, and it's tough to think about it, and it's tough to deal with.
Yeah, and don't forget my boat's still out in the barn.
I know.
So.
That's right.
I need to make sure I get that back.
Hey, when we sell, everything goes.
Right.
Except the boat.
So again, we're talking real estate today, talking about the local market, kind of what's happening, and we're talking here with John Mangas from ReMax Preferred. If you've got questions, you can always reach out to us, but if you want to get a hold of John Mangas directly, you can call ReMax Preferred at 419-720-5600 is how you can get your questions answered. So whether, again, you're a first-time home buyer, whether you're looking for that 5-bedroom to downsize from, or whether you are trying to help out with mom or dad's situation or help settle the estate, I've personally worked with them for a long time. They can give you some great advice and guidance and help kind of steer you through with all of the great real estate agents that they have there through ReMax. When we're looking at some other things too, I guess, it's like people ask me, Nolan, what do you think the stock market's going to do? I'm always willing to give my opinion, but at the end of the day, the market doesn't care what my opinion is. But if I ask you that, what would you think that you would see for the trends maybe over the next 6 to 12 months in the local real estate market?
So, kind of what you just said, these are my opinions. I read a ton from our national association. There's some important deep thinkers that I follow, and then I try and overlay that information with what I'm seeing here locally. So let me dive in with that. We have this big group called baby boomers out there, right? Mm-hmm. The problem with baby boomers is the older baby boomers are at a very different place in life than the younger baby boomers, right? So where the older baby boomers are, a lot of them are still very active. They're still very involved with the community. They're riding bikes. They're playing tennis. They're golfing. Whereas perhaps at their parents' generation at that same stage, they were downsizing and they were getting out of the 2-story and they were already moving on to that next place. We're not seeing that happening quite so much right now. So the baby boomers and that demographic is really different than the previous generation at that same stage. We've got the Generation Xers. That's probably you guys. Maybe not. You're a Generation Xer, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All
I'm
right.
not.
You're not. All right.
I'm a boomer.
All right. Oh, I didn't know that. All right. So, Xers make up a smaller piece of the demographic, but then, there's those millennials. So if you look at boomers and you look at Xers, somewhere between 68 and 73% of them all own homes. But when you look at the millennials, it's on the low 30s, like 34% have bought homes. So they're going to continue to drive the market for a long while. And what really needs to happen is back to the baby boomers. The older boomers need to like start letting go of their big house so that the millennials can buy them. And we're not seeing that happen, partially because of the impact that the Great Recession had on new construction. The number of builders, the number of building permits in Northwest Ohio has never recovered post Great Recession. So, we're not seeing nearly the number of new homes being brought to the market. By the way, Gen Z are buying homes in their early 20s, which is a complete different dynamic than the millennials, I might add.
Well, I know we're quickly coming up on a break here, but before we do that, part of our show is called Committed to the 419, and we really love to focus on nonprofits and businesses that are focused on doing good things in our community in the 419. And as we kind of wrap up this segment of the show, John, I want to talk a little bit about your 20-year commitment that you guys have done with your event called Cinco de Mayo. And I know a lot of the people watching or listening have an opportunity to be able to come out to that Cinco de Mayo event. So why don't you give us some of the details about what you're doing with the Children's Miracle Network and Susan G. Komen?
Awesome. This is our 20th year, like you said. We're super proud of that. We've had so much fun along the way. This year it's at Reset in Rossford, Perrysburg Township. We have a live band out of Cleveland called Tricky Dick coming in, silent auction, live auction. We even have a 6-month lease on a Mercedes-Benz from Coppice Motors down in Tiffin, Ohio. A little bit of everything. It's a great, great event. What I'm super proud of is all of the dollars stay local. We earmark every dollar that we raise to go right back into our community here. So to punctuate that, we're not sending it to Children's Miracle Network's home office or the Susan B. Komen home office. It stays right here with the local chapters. And this year will be the year that we push over the $500,000 mark in proceeds. So I'm so proud of that.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
So since I'm with the retirement guys, I've always said that I can't retire until we hit the $1 million mark with that. So I got a ways to go yet.
It's good. Good to make an impact. It makes a difference right here locally. So we, appreciate businesses and companies like you that are committed to the 419. So if people wanted to get tickets to that event or they wanted to sign up for the event, would the best way to just call the office?
Just call the office, 419-720-5600. Teresa will answer the phone, and she'll be glad to get you whatever you need, whether you want to buy a ticket or buy a raffle ticket for the Mercedes. It's a lot of fun, and the dollars stay local. We're just proud to do it.
Awesome. I appreciate you taking some time to join us here on our show and share a little bit of an insights about the local real estate market and kind of what the hot trends are, and a couple of pointers on how to get prepared for whether you're a buyer or a seller, and a couple of the dangers and pitfalls to watch out for. But again, anybody who's listening or watching, if you have an interest, it's worth a phone call to have a conversation to talk about, how it applies to your unique situation. And again, you can get a hold of ReMax by giving them a call at 419-720-5600. So again, thanks so much, John. It was good to have you on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
ReMax Preferred and America's Retirement Headquarters definitely committed to the 419. If you have questions about some of the strategies that Nolan was talking about earlier, or anything about retirement, give a call to the number 419-794-3030. You can find them online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk with Amanda Held from Hooves on how they're helping save local veterans from PTSD and how you can get involved. Plus, if you're over the age of 72 and you're making donations to charity, you're going to make sure you know about this strategy to help reduce your taxes and make your bigger impact with that donation. That conversation continues after this.